Hello and welcome to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. I'm Juliet, the daughter.
And that makes me Kevin the dad.
And this week, after I listened to a pretty good podcast called What Went Wrong, which takes you through what went wrong behind some of Hollywood's most famous and infamous films, after listening to them talk about Ishtar, I thought we would talk about In Retrospect with Mike Nichols and Ishtar's director, Elaine May. So, Dad, what do we need to know?
Okay, well, we need to know that it is Nichols and May, but since you went down that rabbit hole with Ishtar, I'm only going to focus in depth on Elaine May's biography. But if you want to learn more about Mike Nichols, read Mike Nichols, A Life by Mark Harris, which I actually read a few years back. And
Good book?
Fascinating read. The guy was very accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as for Elaine Iva Berlin was born April 21st, 1932 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her father, Jack, was a theater director and actor, and her mom, Ida, was an actress. Her dad had a traveling Yiddish theater company, and Elaine made her debut at 3 years old. Since it was a traveling theater, Elaine had been in about 50 schools by the time she was 10 years old.
God, wow.
Yeah. Her dad died when she was 11, and she and her mom moved to Los Angeles. Elaine went to Hollywood High School but dropped out at 14. At 16, she married engineer and toy inventor Marvin May.
Ooh.
They had one daughter, Jeannie May, later Jeannie Berlin, who became an actress and screenwriter, and her most recent work was in the TV series Succession.
Oh, wow.
Elaine and Marvin divorced in 1950. She married 2 more times, the second ending in divorce, and the third ending in her husband's death. Then, from 1999 until his death in 2019, she had a long-term relationship with, wait for it, one of your favorite people.
Oh, no. Who is it?
Stanley Donen. As in Stanley and Gene Kelly singing in the rain.
Oh, yes. Mr. Donnan.
That guy. Yeah.
That rat bastard. Anyway.
There you go. After divorcing Marvin May, Elaine studied acting and held down various odd jobs. She tried to enroll in college, but in California, you had to have a high school diploma first. But, get this, I've never heard of this. The University of Chicago didn't have that rule. So she set out with $7 and hitchhiked to Chicago. Even then, she just audited classes. One class was a philosophy class Mike Nichols was taking. He was also an actor in the school's theater group. They were introduced to each other at one of his stage shows. The director, Paul Sill, said, "Mike, I want you to meet the only other person on the campus of the University of Chicago who's as hostile as you are, Elaine May."
Wow, what an introduction.
In 1955, Elaine joined an off-campus improv group, the Compass Players. Mike joined the group and resumed his friendship with Elaine. He was a lousy improviser at first, but he said she was very generous and she kept him going. And in 1957, they were asked to leave the group because they were too good.
Oh my God, wow.
They auditioned for agent Jack Rollins in New York, and within weeks, he had them on the Steve Allen Show. They also put out their first comedy album, Improvisations to Music. They were accompanied by Marty Rubenstein on piano. They gained a wide audience because they had both snob and mob appeal. And they were the first comedy duo in which both members were intelligent as opposed to the usual smart one, dumb one. And Elaine's characters were non-traditional, no being a housewife for her. She was a doctor, a psychologist, or a sophisticated woman, and they didn't talk down to their audience. Mike and Elaine trusted them to pick up on subtle references. In 1960, they debuted on Broadway with An Evening with Mike Nichols and Elaine May. It was the hottest show in town. Lines went around the block, and it stunned the both of them.
Wow.
They could not believe they were making an actual living doing this. The show ran for 306 performances,
That's pretty good.
and the subsequent album of excerpts from the show won a Grammy for Best Comedy Album. In 1961, they put out their final album, Mike Nichols and Elaine May Examine Doctors. And then they broke up. Mike was becoming more and more afraid of improv, while doing the same act every night on Broadway was taking a toll on Elaine, who loved improv. They would reunite in 1980, acting in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf on stage in New Haven, Connecticut.
Wow, that must have been interesting.
Then again in 1996, when Elaine wrote the screenplay to The Birdcage, which
he directed
Mike
it.
directed.
Yep.
But before that, Mike would direct his first movie, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, with Richard Burton Elizabeth Taylor, George Segal, and Sandy Dennis. And I think almost all of them got nominated for Best Acting or Supporting.
Burton was the
acting
only
roles.
one who wasn't.
Aha.
Which, ouch. Ouch.
Then he directed The Graduate, and then a lot of other movies after that. Some good, some great, some not so much.
And he also, I think, directed Annie on Broadway.
Oh, okay. He died in 2014. As for Elaine, she spent the rest of the 60s writing plays and acting in movies. In 1971, she wrote and directed and starred in A New Leaf. Walter Matthau played a bachelor faced with bankruptcy. He embarks on wooing Elaine, who plays an awkward botanist/heiress, Henrietta Lowell, in order to save his lifestyle. He also decides to kill her. Hilarity ensues. It got great reviews, and Elaine was nominated for a Golden Globe for acting. In 2019, the Library of Congress selected A New Leaf for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Maybe I'll check that film out.
She followed that up with The Heartbreak Kid in 1972, and again, great reviews. Then she wrote and directed a crime drama, Mikey and Nicky, starring Peter Falk and John Cassavetes. Lots of post-production troubles, including rising costs. Paramount took the film away from Elaine and did their own edit, which did not go well.
Oh God, that happened with Ishtar too.
Eventually, Elaine got the rights to the movie and put out a director's cut in 1980. In 2019, she worked with the Criterion Collection to create a new director's cut, but the original experience put Elaine off from directing for years. She went back to acting, appearing in Neil Simon's California Suite, and she co-wrote the screenplay To Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. She also did uncredited screenwriting for Tootsie, mostly Bill Murray scenes.
Yep.
Oh, and she also did some uncredited screenwriting for
What?
Labyrinth.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Oh, I could think of one plot point she probably changed that was in the original that didn't make it in the final movie.
Oh, and then in 1987, Warren Beatty, he wanted to do something for Elaine.
Yep.
As she had done a major uncredited rewrite for his movie Reds.
And he was very grateful to her for doing that.
He was so grateful he wanted to produce a movie for her and star in it as well. Her idea was to do a variation on the old Bob Hope and Bing Crosby Road 2 movies.
Yep, Road to Morocco.
And, okay, plug here, check out our Bing Crosby podcast for more info about those movies.
Yep.
Now, she thought it would be funny to cast against type.
Yes.
Warren Beatty would have the Bob Hope role of being the bumbler, whilst Dustin Hoffman would be the suave ladies' man.
And apparently it kind of worked.
Hilarious.
Yep.
But Dustin Hoffman had reservations. But Beatty assured him, this is going to be great.
It was not.
It wasn't.
Fun fact, they wanted to work with a cobra in the movie, or some sort of snake, and the snake had a heart attack and died on set.
And there was another where they wanted to get a camel that had blue eyes.
Yep.
And someone went out to find it, but they wanted too much money. And the guy thought, I can get another one, and then realized camels don't have blue eyes.
Nope.
Went back to get the camel, and he had been turned into camel meat.
Yep.
Yep. And then there was another thing where, like, they kept looking at the script saying, we really need to fix this. It's all going to work out. Don't worry about it. They kind of kept pushing it back and pushing it back.
And then Warren Beatty shot his own version of the film, and when they were in the cutting room, it was basically like, all right, show of hands. Who likes Elaine's cut better? Who likes my cut better? And whatever had the greatest show of hands ended up in the movie.
And that movie was called Ishtar.
Yep.
Long story short, there were a lot of on-set problems and post-production problems. Ishtar was referred to as either The Road to Ruin, which is genius, or Warren's Gate.
Have you ever seen it?
Nope, not yet. It wound up being the last film Elaine would direct. It bombed at the box office and reviews were not kind. And it's almost like from what I was reading, it was like the movie studios and Hollywood in general wanted it to fail because they felt that Warren Beatty had some sort of comeuppance due to him.
That's interesting. But it's also interesting because it's like Scorsese and Tarantino and a bunch of other directors list Ishtar as some of their favorite movies.
Yep, nowadays it's looked on as, according to the New Yorker, a wrongly maligned masterwork. And yes, Martin Scorsese, it says it's one of his favorite films of all time. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. Gary Larson, of all people, from The Far Side,
Yes.
he did his video store rental cartoon in Hell, and there was just all copies of Ishtar. Then he saw the movie whilst on an airplane to somewhere
Yep.
and realized, wow, this is a pretty good movie, and actually made a public apology, which he said was something he never, ever does, but he felt that
Yeah.
he had wrongly maligned the movie.
What would be the movie at the video rental store in hell?
Oh, so many from which to choose.
Yeah, right.
Just so many. Plan 9 from Outer Space, Robot Monster,
The Room, Velocipaster.
Velocipaster,
Mike and I watched it. That was a movie in the academic sense.
Centipede.
Maybe. Listeners, what would be your least favorite movie to have on loop in hell? Let us know in the comments.
Okay, and as an aside, when Kevin Costner made his disaster of a movie, Waterworld,
Oh, yeah.
it was referred to as fish tar.
Good fun. Good fun.
Yes, it's worth it just for that.
Anyway.
Okay, so like I said earlier, Elaine went on to do The Birdcage with Mike Nichols in 1996, and in 1998 they teamed up again for Primary Colors. Elaine received an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay. In 2000, she appeared in Woody Allen's Small Time Crooks and won a National Society of Film Critics Award, which is a thing, for Best Supporting Actress. She teamed up with the Woodman again in 2016 for the Amazon series Crisis in 6 Scenes. When Mike Nichols died in 2014, Elaine stepped up to direct a 2016 documentary about him for the PBS series American Masters. In 2018, she returned to Broadway in a revival of The Waverly Gallery. At 86 years old, she won a Tony for Best Actress in the Play,
Her speech was very good.
and she currently holds the record for oldest actress to win a Tony.
Yep.
As recently as 2021, she starred as Ruth Gator Ginsburg in the Good Wife spin-off The Good Fight.
Oh, wow.
And she also received an honorary Academy Award that year, which is kind of like a participation ribbon.
Or it's
And-
like, sorry, we screwed up. Here you go.
Yeah, and was honored at the Academy's Governor's Awards, whatever that is, in 2022. Now, as for me, I became aware of Nichols and May via Uncle Michael.
Oh, okay. That makes
Ages and
sense.
ages ago, he somehow got his hands on a vinyl copy of Nichols and May Examine Doctors. And I think he might have gotten that from our next door neighbor before it got turned into that mega mansion. It was just a regular sized house.
Yep.
And there was a doctor, Dr. Brillhart, who lived there. And I guess he might have had the album being a doctor. And somehow Uncle Michael got his hands on it. And the only thing I could remember from that album was A Little More Gauze.
Yep.
Just them saying, more
More
gauze,
gauze,
more
more
gauze,
gauze.
more gauze. I thought, what the hell is this? Anyway, I'm really not sure what made me buy in retrospect. Maybe I was looking for something new and I thought, okay, I'll see what this is all about.
What the hey?
I may have gotten it from Amazon, maybe, or maybe Newberry Comics. I'm really not sure. But the full title is In Retrospect, asterisk, and the asterisk is some of the things you've always wanted to know about a lot of stuff but never bothered to ask. And I think this is a takeoff on the book, Everything You Always Want to Know About Sex, asterisk, but was afraid to ask. That came out toward the end of the 60s, but it became a Woody Allen movie in 1972, which was also the same year In Retrospect was released on vinyl. It came out on CD in 1996. Now, here's the thing. It contains the entirety of An Evening with Mike Nichols and Elaine May, which that whole album was just only a little over half an hour. It also has a good chunk of Examined Doctors and improvisations to music. So let's dive in.
Opening track, telephone. Mike Nichols is late for a very important meeting and needs to call to let Mr. Kaplan know he's not going to make it on time. But he has to deal with the operator first, then eventually her supervisor, and that supervisor's supervisor. At first, it's clear that this service is a little unorthodox and also doesn't give a fig about customer service in the best way. Elaine May has the sass everyone who's worked in customer service wishes they could have with the lines, "That number is listed in your directory," and my favorite, "Information cannot argue with a closed mind." And of course, things get worse when Mike's last dime gets collected by accident. So we go through a hell-burden circus before Mike finally gets the number, and then, well, there's a twist that we can't give away here. I think what makes this work is how Elaine picks the perfect voice for each employee of the information service. However, I have listened to this sketch so many times, and I grew up with a boomer dad, so I know about the information service and the concept of a telephone operator. But I don't think a lot of people in my generation would fully understand the jokes because they're so period specific with an operator. Nowadays, the worst thing to happen would be your cell phone not getting reception. And also because I've heard this sketch so many times and know the twists, it's not as funny to me years later because I know the twists that are coming. I never had that problem with the Smothers Brothers or the Portuguese Fireman, but for this, I was mostly not reacting until we got to Miss Jones, the supervisor's supervisor, and there was another tonal shift with Elaine's voice that led for Mike to completely change his tone too. That makes it funny along with the twist ending.
So like I said, this track and the next three make up the entirety of An Evening with Mike Nichols and Elaine May. And I did some searching, and maybe I didn't dive deep enough, but I really wish the entire show was available rather than just the 4 skits. So Mike is trying to reach George Kaplan and has to deal with an operator played by Elaine to get the number. Now, this is back when there was a device called a payphone, which you could find on almost any corner in a big city.
And now if you find one, you're like, oh my God, take a photo. They're about to take it down.
Yep. Elaine's operator is officious. That number is in your directory, like you had said. And Mike has to swear there's no directory in the phone booth because it was like massive. It was a massive book. And some people, probably, I'm sure in New York, would just,
stole the directory.
You had to yank it off the chain. It was a chained book.
Oh, okay.
So you could either cut it off, or if you're really strong, yank it out. And then the unthinkable happens. The phone collects the dime, which was a thing back then. It's Mike's last one, and he needs to make the call. You kids with your smartphones have it so easy.
Yeah, compared to what he goes through.
The operator assures Mike when he hangs up, the dime will be returned to him. But he's heard that dime hit all the other dimes, and he can't take the chance of hanging up. His car broke down. He's an hour late for a meeting, and he has to make that call. So Mike asks to be transferred to a human.
You wish to speak to a human?
Yes, the information supervisor, who's just as officious as the operator. And she also makes it a point to stress that she's the supervisor.
I'm a supervisor.
Yes. They get into an argument about Bell Telephone stealing or not stealing the dime. Finally, the supervisor says she can return it. What is your name and address?
Operator, you're going to send me a lot of stamps, aren't you?
And that's what the phone company would do. They would send you stamps that equal the amount of money that you lost.
Well, that's bullshit.
For you kids out there, stamps are what we would put on snail mail to move the mail through the post office. So Mike has to go higher to the managing supervisor, Miss Jones, who is so empathetic to Mike's situation. Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Miss Jones.
Yes. She gives Mike a free call. Just give her the number he's trying to call.
Operator, you're dealing with an ass.
But he's able to give her George Kaplan's name, and she gives him the number. He dials it, and I'm not going to give away, but the funniest line is, that is Kaplan, that is K as in knife.
Oh, I remember what I wanted to talk about. You remember when we went to that ceremony at Hendricken and Uncle Joe had that comedian perform, Ben Haig?
Yeah.
So he would do a sketch where it's like, all right, so the number for the tracking for this package is going to be P as in pneumonia.
Yeah.
And I went up to him and I said, did you get that from Nichols and May? And he goes, everybody keeps thinking that I do, but I swear to God, I'd never heard that sketch before.
Anyway, I've heard it as many times as you, maybe even more. It still cracks me up. I still think it's hysterical. I guess the modern equivalent for this would be, dealing with the automatic, if you need this, press this. If you need this, if you need to talk to a person, please hang on the line.
That's more tech support, I feel like, than, yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that's, like I said, I guess that's the modern equivalent, and I'm sure someone's probably done a skit about tech support.
Oh, yeah. Next track, Adultery. We get the iconic opening of Mike Nichols saying, we'd like to say a few words about adultery.
It's coming back.
So we get 3 instances of adultery around the world. First America, then England, and finally France. And the premise of each one is roughly the same. The adulterers Louise and her name was Beau meet in a hotel lobby as they cuckold her husband George. Having this sketch in different countries shows how different cultures regard adultery. My favorite lines in the American one are, darling, to be doing this terrible thing and to be laid on top of it. And Elaine May through tears saying, I couldn't do it if he didn't trust me. The English portion is my least favorite. Nichols and May make fun of the upper crust very well, but even I find the parody too stuffy and dragging on a bit too long. And the French are, Well,
Very
they're
French.
and delightfully so. And each one has a little twist. 66% of the sketch is perfect. I just wish they did it a country other than England. The piano is a nice accompaniment too, with different musical styles for each country that I quite enjoy.
Well, I think the piano's there because it's like the Tristers meet in the hotel lobby, I think.
Yeah.
First as guilt-ridden Americans, then as very polite Brits, and finally as, I couldn't think of any other phrase, but very Frenchy French.
Yep.
And I think all three scenarios are hilarious, and you are going to come down on me about this. I think the British one, to me, is the funniest because it just goes so off the rails. With and to me, I think the funniest lines are, "You're early." Yes, yes, I am. Nice to have the extra time.
That I do like that.
And then they get into that conversation about hats.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it's just
like, get back
so
to the
weird.
adultery.
It's just so weird because it's so unexpected. And then they get in that conversation about Piggy Trevelyan.
Oh, yeah.
And that's even just more bizarre. And I like it because it's just so unexpected. And it just,
Yeah,
it
but I'm
just
like, get back to the main point.
it just
like all
cracks
the other
me up.
sketches do.
Eventually they do, but
Yeah,
it
but I
just
want them
it
to
just
get back
really
to it
cracks
quicker.
me up because it's just so left field.
Next track?
Yes,
Okay.
let's.
Disc jockey. Mike plays Jack Ego, a disc jockey who can't stop name dropping while interviewing the lovely Barbara Musk. Elaine
Yes.
plays the ditzy actress very well with the overly bubbly laugh that has to be reined in when she tries to be deep. But she can barely get a word in edgewise as he mentions hanging with Bernard Baruch and Albert Schweitzer. And she tries to roll with it by agreeing with everything he says. Still,
Actually, Jack, I think you're right.
yeah, still a better late night host than Jimmy Fallon.
Wow, wow.
Oh,
whoa.
yeah. Well, I remember when they did that, the late night host did the Strike Force 5 podcast during the writer's strike to raise money for their late night show writers. And that was basically all the time was just the other host roasting Jimmy Fallon for not being able to ask a question. It was beautiful. Anyway, it's also a rare sketch where we see Nichols and May respond to the audience with their acting choices because that audience is substituting for the studio audience. And we finally get to the movie, Two Girls in Paris, a movie musical about Gertrude Stein, which had me going, oh, brother. And of course, as soon as she starts talking, he's disinterested. My favorite joke is, I thought she was supposed to be played by Spencer Tracy, which, holy crap, they kind of do look alike.
And I love her reply. Oh, just as a child.
Yeah. My second favorite is when she clearly doesn't know who Schweitzer is as she mumbles his name. And the back and forth keeps going and going until the biggest name drop of them all.
Yes.
Very well done satire.
Yep. Jack Ego interviewing giggly airhead starlet Barbara Musk, and Elaine just gets the voice down perfect because I think these types are probably still out there. And same with Mike's impression of Jack Ego. I'm sure there are Jacks out there who have podcasts. But yeah, he's the type of guy, he just cannot help himself dropping names of famous people that he's met or run into, and everyone's like, yeah, close personal friend of mine. Yeah. And, you know, he talks about how he was talking to financier Bernard Baruch. You can go Google him. He's a swell guy, and what do you say about that, sweetheart? And it doesn't matter, whoever he mentions, it's, what do you say about, what do you think? What do you think? And she's got to say, I think you're right, Jack. He's a great guy. Yeah. And like the one about Bertrand Russell, you know, yeah, he's not a pushy philosopher. Yeah. And then the best line, I understand from the Pope that you just finished the movie. And her reply, well, he just can't keep a secret, can he?
Yep.
And then she says, well, that's why she's on the show. She's trying to push the movie. And she makes the point to say, this is why you have me on here, to talk about her movie, the musical Two Gals in Paris about Gertrude Stein. And son of a gun, Gertie was a close personal friend of Jack's. And I think one of the funniest lines is when Barbara says, it's a real change of pace for her in this movie because she doesn't swim in it. And the name dropping goes on all the way up to, I can't say, but it is hysterical. And then we went to, when we went to that marriage
Renewal
vow
ceremony?
renewal thing, it cracked me up because it was at the Father Peyton Center, and he was the one who came up with that line, the family that prays together stays together, which Mike uses in this skit. And that was all I could think of sitting there, just like laughing to myself.
Next track, Mother and Son. The classic opening lines, hello, Arthur. this is your mother.
Do you remember me?
And everyone in the audience laughs knowingly. Goes to show mothers will always be mothers, even when their son is a rocket scientist. I'm sure all the other mothers, before their count off, down. It's the classic worrywart mother stereotype. Lays on the guilt bombs, understates their medical conditions, and constantly worries about their son. And Mike Nichols is just going, yeah, sure, yeah, trying to appease her nerves that need x-raying.
And just trying to push his way through it.
Then Arthur's mom gets to the point where she uses the classic mom phrase, "You'll always be my baby," with a change in tone that shows the power mothers have over their sons. This is probably my favorite sketch on the CD, hands down.
Yep, Arthur, this is your mother. Do you remember me? And then the guilt bombs are released.
Yep.
Like not one at a time, but like, you know, in like those old World War II movies, like the plane would open up and it would just be like 87 bombs coming all at once.
Phyllis, eat something, you'll faint. No, I don't want my mouth to be full when my son calls me.
Yes. But Arthur was too busy trying to launch Vanguard. I read in the paper how you keep losing them.
Mother, I don't lose them.
I hope they're not taking it out of your pay.
What if they're taking out of his pay? Or my favorite one, when she goes to the doctor, I have this son, and he doesn't call his mother, and that man turned pale. Yes. And that man is a doctor.
And I love it. You mentioned the line about how she has to go to the doctor to get her nerves x-rayed.
Yep.
And at one point, Arthur tells his mom, I feel awful. And she says to him, oh, honey, if I could believe that, I'd be the happiest mother in the world.
Yep.
This skit is timeless. As long as there are mothers and sons, this skit will live on.
Yep.
And Keith Richards will be listening to it along with the cockroaches. Now, before we jump into the rest of the tracks, I want to point out that from this point on, in the rest of these skits, there is no audience, which, it's all studio bits. And I think this is the only comedy album that I have that's like that. I mean, the other ones I have, Bob Newhart, Steve Martin, Rodney Dangerfield, Brian Regan, the Smothers Brothers, Judy Tenuta on cassette, unfortunately. I'm trying to find the CD. Stephen Wright, Henny Youngman, they were all done in front of an audience. And I think having an audience adds a certain something. I wish I could
put a better mood.
Yeah. So can comedy without an audience still be funny? Let's find out.
Next track, a little more gauze.
Gauze.
More gauze.
More gauze. More gauze.
I remember this sketch threw me off when I first heard it as a kid because it's the first one on the album without the studio audience. Hearing it as an adult, man, that doctor is a jerk and a creep. Elaine is the nurse to Mike Nichols' doctor, who keeps thinking of different things she can hand him in the operating room just so he can find out if she loves him or if she's got feelings for Dr. Pinsky. Meanwhile, the other attendants in the operating room are looking on in bewilderment, and the patient's oxygen is failing, to which Mike Nichols says, let it fail, with such a careless tone of voice, it's pretty funny. But that's really the only funny part of the sketch, along with gauze, more gauze, more gauze.
Oh, more gauze.
More gauze, we're out of gauze.
How could we out of gauze? You used all the gauze.
Yeah.
So this track and the next three obviously are from Nichols and They Examine Doctors. A doctor is operating, and he keeps asking the nurse for more gauze until it all runs out. Then sponges, then the clamp. And it finally gets to a point where, like you said, he's stalling because he tells the nurse that he loves her, and she's trying to keep it professional. And it goes downhill from there to the point where he asks her to marry him. And then she's trying to get him to focus on the operation at hand. And then he's asked her for so much stuff, there's nothing left to pass to him because it's all inside the patient. And he refuses to finish the operation until she says yes to marry him, and I will not give away the ending. And this skit makes me smile, but not laugh out loud.
Yeah. Next track, Morning Rounds. Mrs. Lotke wakes up to find the doctor in the room, only to realize he wants to know if a certain gorgeous, tall, dark nurse has been asking for him.
Is that Nurse Radetzky? Was she in?
Elaine plays the poor suffering Mrs. Lotke really well, who really just wants her IV put back in. And when the doctor gets the answer he wants, he leaves saying, "You're all right, take your temperature." More palatable than the previous sketch, I think, because the feelings are clearly mutual between him and the mentioned but never seen nurse.
Yeah, so Mike is Dr. Bloom, Elaine is Mrs. Lotke, who is a patient whose intravenous has slipped out, and she's just like, But a more pressing matter for Dr. Bloom is Nurse Radetzky, if she was in, and did she say anything about Dr. Bloom? I think so. She did? She did? Oh, you've made me so happy. And then, take your temperature. You'll be fine. And again, it left me smiling, but not like laughing out loud.
Next track, Merry Christmas, Doctor. Now we have Elaine as the doctor and Mike Nichols as the patient, and this time she's a doctor of psychology. The primary conflict in this scene is that Mr. Weidman is not going to be in on Friday because it's Christmas Eve and he wants to be with the wife and the kids. Elaine is a little too miffed by this. I fail to see the humor in this one because it's like a mini tragedy due to how Elaine really sells how wounded she is, and Mike Nichols comes across as cold. Very skippable.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of like their roles are reversed, where he's got to be the one to almost be like the analyst, and she's the patient. Yeah, he has to break the news that he won't be in on Friday, Christmas Eve, as he will be spending it with his wife and family. Well, this is short notice. Well, it is Monday. And Dr. Weiss slowly starts to unravel. And you feel that an hour away from the kids for your analyst would be too much time. And then she just picks up speed with the unraveling. And this is the only of the doctor skits that just makes me laugh out loud. I just think it's hilarious because, again, it's like, the tables have turned, and it's the last thing you expect to have, like, the analyst to be so needy, like, you can't come in, you can't just commit, 1 hour to see me. And I don't think he was heartless. I think he was just
I don't think he was heartless, but I think he was very professional about it. It's like, listen, I have a wife and kids, they're my priority.
Exactly, professional. He was trying to be analytical about it.
Next track, physical. Another sketch where Elaine is the doctor and Mike is surprised that she's a lady.
Dr. Mittelschmerz.
He is in because he has an unpleasant pain in his abdomen. The discomfort comes in when she has to inspect his abdomen, and suddenly he doesn't find it weird anymore. Not as sexist as I was worried it was going to be, but it still didn't bowl me over with laughs.
So Dr. Klaus Prober has to see Dr. Mittelschmerz, and son of a gun, Dr. Mittelschmerz is Elaine. A lady doctor was a big deal back in 1962. You're a lady. Yes, I am. He's had stomach pains for 3 months.
Ugh. Why didn't he go to the hospital?
Because that's how we guys are. It'll go away. It's not going away. Maybe it'll go away tomorrow. Maybe the next day. It's not so bad. I think I can live with it. Okay, I'm dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Dr. Mittelschmerz asks him to slip off his clothes, and there's a very long pause. And she gives him privacy so he can put on the sheet. And then she asks him to lower the sheet a little, to take a look. You want me to lower the sheet? Just a little. I just need to take a look. And then she has to touch his stomach to check for sensitivity.
And he's ticklish.
He's very ticklish. And then he gets it under control, and she says, he's in excellent physical condition. How old are you? 32. Does your wife cook for you? I'm not married. How tall are you? 6 feet. Sometimes stress can cause stomach problems. What's your profession? Lawyer. And he has his evenings free. She recommends rest and to come back, and she'll check him in about an hour. And I guess these days it would be kind of like, not appropriate, I suppose.
Yeah, you'd be like, ooh.
But like I said, back in 1962, 62 years ago, funny stuff. I thought it was cute. Again, it doesn't make me laugh out loud.
Yeah. Next track, cocktail piano. Elaine and Mike are out at a cocktail bar. At first you think it's a date, but then you realize it's a boss and his secretary. Cue the Mad Men theme. He cuts her off frequently. He's falling out the window. Thank you.
You're welcome.
He cuts her off frequently, so you know he's not into her for the right reasons. Even when he doesn't cut her off, you can tell from the tone of Mike's voice that he's not that invested in the conversation, or maybe he's a bit more laid back and casual. Oh, and conveniently, his wife is in the mountains. He lures her to his place with the premise of listening to a record. This one felt a bit more gross post-Me Too, so it was another one I didn't really enjoy.
Yeah, this is a rough one.
Yeah.
It'll definitely make you squirm.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was meant to be funny.
No.
So yeah, a boss takes one of his female office workers out for a drink for the swell job she did on running off copies on the mimeograph machine.
You know what I bet his name is? Ray P. McGee.
Oh, jeez. So yeah, the mimeograph machine, which was a precursor to the copy machine. So if you want to, you can go Google what a mimeograph machine was. And yeah, you had that ink, and you had to make sure that it didn't run out.
Makes me grateful for the printer I have at work.
Because that was hand crank. You had to keep turning it and turning it.
That's a workout.
It was. So yes, he lets out the fact that his wife is up in the mountains. He's alone in his apartment, just him and the dog. And just also him and his hi-fi. You can Google that, hi-fi, great thing. You got that wood and the record player, and just the wood would just bring out the great sound of the music. And he's got the newest Andre Kostelanetz record, and he'd love to play it for her. And aside, Andre Kostelanetz was a light music, classical music director, very popular, sold over 50 million records.
Oh.
Kind of like an Arthur Fiedler, Boston Pops kind of thing, but I don't think he was tied to one specific orchestra. And so then she says, up to your apartment? Yeah, only just a few minutes. I got this record. You really might like to... Yeah, and then it just kind of gets uncomfortable. And I have to say, I watched the entire run of Mad Men, and even Mad Men was never like this. It never had a scene.
No, they wanted to sleep with Don.
Like this.
Yeah, he never forced them. It's just like, I'm John Hamm. I look great. Of course you're going to want to sleep with me.
But he did respect, what the hell is it? Oh my God, I'm blanking out on her name. Her name.
Peggy?
No, not Peggy. Oh, obviously they didn't. But there was the other one. Oh my God, Joni.
I don't.
Christina Hendricks' character.
Hendricks?
Christina Hendricks. I am so sorry, cannot remember your character's name.
Let me Google it. Hold on. You tell me, and I'll Google her character's name. Tell me what you were talking about.
Yeah, Mad Men was, like you said, Mad Men was never like this.
Okay, Joan Harris.
Ah, thank you.
You were right with Joni. All right. But wasn't she seeing Ray Cooper at that company anyway? The other boss who was not played by the guy from How to Succeed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that his name, Ray?
Something.
No, Ray Cooper played percussion for Elton John and George Harrison.
Whoops. Maybe his name was Roy or something, and that's why I got confused. Sorry. All right.
Let's go to the next one.
Bach to Bach. This is how classical musicians sound to everyone else. I can look at this sketch in two ways. It's two musicians trying to outdo each other, or it's two people out on a date trying to outdo each other in terms of how cultured they are. You know that Nichols and May are smart because of how they parody smart people, and how you can talk a lot without really saying anything, to quote David Byrne, or to paraphrase rather. And believe it or not, I think...
talking a lot, but you're not saying anything.
Yeah.
I have nothing to say. My lips are sealed. And then I kill.
Say something once, why say it again? And believe it or not, I think this is a parody of the type of interactions I wanted to have when I met men in college who were absolutely brilliant, but were secretly philanderous dickbags. That's the only term I can use, because that's just what they were. My favorite parts are when they discuss the mathematics of... I broke Dad, he needs a minute, hold on.
Let the man press you with my useless knowledge.
Yeah, basically. Okay, my favorite parts are when they tell... Hold on, Dad needs a minute.
All right, wait. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
My favorite parts are when they discuss the mathematics of music without actually talking about the relationship between numbers and harmony. If you want to see a good summary of that, watch Donald Duck in Math Magic Land, which you can find on YouTube for free. And when they talk about Nietzsche, I feel like if I sent this to Aaron, the two of us could go off on this sketch for days. A sketch I enjoyed very much because it reminds me of the smart person I want to be. Someone who knows a lot about certain subjects but uses the words of a layman. Again, someone who and I don't want to be, again, to quote David Byrne, someone who's talking a lot but not saying anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Nichols and May play two artsy-fartsy types who almost like try to out-pretend each other.
Exactly.
Whilst listening to a Bach piece. Mm-hmm. You know it very well. I know it better than myself.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we've run into these types.
And maybe we've become these people, too, by accident without meaning to.
Well, I think when you're, like, in your, like, college years, you just do because you think you know it all, and then as you get older, you realize, no, I didn't know what the hell I was talking about, but it sounded good at the time. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's people in love with the smell of their own farts.
No, but that was very clever of you.
Yes. We have to tell a story about your mom.
Yep.
One of your mom's English teachers,
Dr. Morin.
Dr. Morin. He met
Robert Frost,
and he went total fanboy on him and said, is this what you meant by this poem? Da, 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 da. And Robert Frost looked at him and said, no, but that was very clever of you.
Which, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. My respect for that man goes up even more through the roof than it already is.
Wow, Robert Frost politely insulted me. Oh my God, I love him even more. This does make me smile in some spots with the line, too many people think of Adler as a man who made mice neurotic, but he was so much more. And I had to look that up, and that was Alfred Adler was an Austrian psychologist, and there is something called Adlerian therapy, which I did not dive into because I thought I just don't want to know.
That's probably a can of worms.
Yeah, there's just some rabbit holes you just don't want to go down. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're just trying to, yeah, there is that thing of, I will admit it, you know, like you're in your 20s and like, hey, see that woman over there? Yeah, watch me impress her with this. Yeah, I read War and Peace, the first page. Yeah.
You got that from Cheers, didn't you?
No. Actually, the first one I got it from was Peanuts, where Snoopy decided he was going to read War and Peace, but he was only going to read one word a day. Then he gets up to day 6, and Woodstock comes along and says, you know,
how's the book?
Can you start back from the beginning? He's like, no, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange. Then I actually read War and Peace, and highly overrated. Most boring book I ever read. Sorry, Leo, but it just was.
Let me put it this way. Natasha Pierre in The Great Comet of 1812 is an adaptation of a section of War and Peace, and that musical is over 2 hours long, and it's not even that many pages in the grand scheme of the book, so that shows you how long it is.
It's probably better than the book.
Oh, yeah. Next track. Second Piano Concerto, The Dentist. Oh, but before we do that, I have a question. The classical music pieces that are used in these two sketches, do you know what they are, or are they listed in the album jacket?
No, they are not. And
God
I probably
damn it.
should have Shazammed them.
Yeah.
But I didn't think of doing it. But hey, we know the Bach one is gotta be Bach.
Well, if you ever find out the names of the pieces, let me know, because I think I do want to download them on my classical music playlist on Spotify. Okay.
Well, we know this one is called Second Piano Concerto, The Dentist.
Reba is having an appointment with her dentist, Adolf, which, unfortunate name. That name died down for obvious reasons in baby registries.
Oh, like I think it was Marathon Man.
I still haven't seen, and I don't know if I have the constitution to see that movie. Did you watch it?
I've seen that scene, and it's difficult.
Anyway, Reba and Adolf are madly in love. She takes his advice about chewing on the other side of her mouth, and she's going to chew like there's no tomorrow. And she thought he would judge her because of her rotten cavity, but when he looked down her throat, she felt seen for the first time, and he loved her because it was her cavity. But when Adolf has to go be a dentist at a leper colony, and Reba's going off to be a dental hygienist in Saudi Arabia, will their love survive? A convoluted premise that can only come out of improv, and it's perfect from start to finish. Bravo.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. It's a dentist-patient skit with piano, so I'm thinking it's like that music that they pump in whilst you're trapped in the dentist chair. My dentist, who's retired.
But a good dentist office.
He was a good dentist office, but taste in music, a little wanting.
They played the easy listening, what was it, Bridge Over Troubled Water station on Sirius XM, which sometimes wasn't bad because you did get Simon and Garfunkel in there.
Yeah, but then James Taylor would come on and I'd be helpless in the chair because the hygienist has like the little scraping things, and I wanted to say, change it, for the love of God, just change it. I'm suffering more from this music than from your scraping and making my gums bleed and whatever.
They could probably do like a relaxing classical music playlist instead, but then maybe people would fall asleep. It's probably a fine line you have to walk with playing music at a doctor's office, because it's like you want the patient to relax, but on the other hand, they can't be unconscious for a procedure where they're not supposed to be unconscious.
Sometimes they have gone into the classic 70s rock station.
Oh, the yacht rock station, yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. I've heard like the classic 70s rock. I'm like, okay, I think I can deal with this a little better.
Maybe they should put on Steely Dan to give you the illusion of being stoned.
Okay, yeah.
That could work.
It's like I'm coked out of my mind without the cocaine. Oh, Novocaine.
And you're lying there, talking about a world gone mad.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the sketch.
Yes. So Reba and Adolf, they confessed their love for each other. It was your cavity, and I think even then I loved it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, he has to tell her he's going to work as a dentist in a leper colony. And I cannot escape leper colonies as of recent, because when we went to
The vow renewal.
the Sunday gospel was about Jesus healing the leper, and then the priest gave a sermon about the 4 types of leprosy that you can contract. And we're all sitting there thinking, this has nothing to do with marriage and marriage vows. And he says, yeah, I know, but my hands are tied. I'm thinking, no,
Pick something else.
you could probably change it. It's not a problem. We're not going to tell on you. We're not going to call the Pope and say, Pope, you didn't do the leprosy thing.
Have him excommunicated.
And then that thing about, her going to Saudi Arabia to be a dental assistant. And if she could just teach one Saudi Arabian dental hygiene.
You'll make me the happiest man in the world. Basically.
It is very, very strange.
But it works.
It is. It is hilarious.
Final track, Nichols and May at work.
Ugh.
Oh. Nichols and May are working out a sketch where he's a son telling his mom he wants to be a nurse, and the two of them can't get through with it without breaking up. Nowadays, it's pretty common for men to be nurses, so it shows the sketches of its time, like with the lady doctor earlier.
It's 1962.
But the point is the camaraderie and how much they enjoy making each other laugh as they improvise together. So for that reason, I'm glad it's on here, but I take it you're not.
Well, it is an outtake, and they are trying to work their way through an idea in which the son goes to his mother and says he wants to be a registered nurse, which I said back in 62, this is highly unusual. A male nurse, it'll never catch on. But I gotta say, it is interesting listening to their process, like how Elaine decides to take it as, let me change it to a Jewish mother. And then, he's like the son, I want to go to university and I know it's going to be a big sacrifice, but this is what I want to do. And I can appreciate the, them working through it. Like it's kind of like, well, I can't put it on a par of like listening to the Beatles outtakes from Revolver, which I know you despise.
Ugh.
But Paul and I were talking about this, how like, okay, they did 15 takes of this. What was it on the 15th that made them decide this is what we're going to do?
But I don't want to hear those other takes. I want the finished product, please and thank you.
I know, Paul was telling me, he says, oh, Juliet hates outtakes. I said, yeah, I know, she despises them. How do you know that? But he just knew for some reason.
Oh, because we talked about it before. I told Paul about it before.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, with this, it's...
Now you know how I feel with Revolver.
Well, for me, listening to music is more fascinating, I guess. And the thing is, I don't think this wound up as a finished skit on the album. I'm not 100% sure, but just reading the titles, I don't think it did. Now, John Mulaney says this is one of his favorite pieces ever. And when Mike Nichols died, he posted on Facebook that this was the best comedy moment on tape ever.
Really?
Really?
That is a niche pick and an odd pick, too.
Well, he got the album. It was given to him as a kid.
Oh, okay.
And he just listened to it over and over. And, that's how he feels. But I really, I can't go that far. Like I said, I really appreciate the process. But it's just, they're definitely cracking each other up. But it's just, yeah. And I like how, like, I don't know if it's the producer or the engineer kind of gets in on it a little bit, but...
Side note with John Mulaney, to go off on a tangent, I remember when he did his first special after getting out of rehab, and he was like, likability is a prison, people will judge you if you're an addict, which sure, some of the people on the internet were judging him for relapsing and going back into rehab. However, John, most people were judging you because you quickly divorced your wife and then shacked up with another woman and got her pregnant afterwards. That's what people were mad about.
Was this Olivia Munn?
Correct.
Was she the Shacky, or was she the first wife?
She was the Shacky, and people were also really suspicious because John Mulaney's like, my wife and I never want to have kids. I don't want it, too much responsibility. And then a couple of days later, Olivia Munn and I are expecting a baby. And everyone's like, what the Yeah.
Huh.
So...
She had a Munn in the oven. Yeah. Sorry.
Overall, Nichols and May is... all right, more dry than I remember. I feel like the bookends of the album are better than what's in the middle. Some sketches work for me and some fall flat. But if you're looking for dry, sophisticated humor, listen to the album. Or if you're a comedy connoisseur, listen to this album at least once. Oh, and go Google the $65 funeral on YouTube, too. Would you like any extras for the loved one? What extras? Well, how about a casket? Oh, we'll take that. Yes, it looks better.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, you gotta watch it. It's so good.
Okay. Overall, I'm glad I have this CD, but just for the first 4 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's not to dismiss all the other ones that kind of make me smile,
Mm-hmm.
but an evening with Nichols and May, it's gold. It's gold, Jerry. It's gold. It is absolutely essential.
Oh, but
and
it's way better than that Seinfeld guy whose name I can't think of right now.
Kenny Banya?
Yeah, way better than Banya.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure all 4 of those tracks are out there on YouTube, or you can get the whole album on Spotify. It's worthwhile listening. Doctors, I would definitely, put in second place. In Improvisations for Music, I'm sorry, that's dead last.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that was their first album, they kind of went up from there.
All right, as always, thank you for listening to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz, because remember, the next time you interact with every time you interact with the video, the greater chance we have of appearing on the YouTube homepage. If you follow me on social media, I post the episodes there. If you're friends with my dad, let him know what you want to listen to, and I'll send it right to your inbox in your email. As always, thank you for listening to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. We'll be back next time with another album to nitpick and gripe about. Dad, anything you want to say before we sign off?
2 things.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Kevin. That's K as in knife. And the only other thing I gotta say is more gauze.
More gauze.
More gauze.
More gauze.
A little more gauze.
We're out of gauze.
Like we out the gauze.
You used all the gauze.